Alright, I am back with another video, and apologies for my extended absence. For those of you who kind of wondered where I went and don't see the community posts that I post on the channel, long story short, I got strep A, which is very, very nasty, infection of the throat, and I was in a lot of pain. I lost my voice, I was very tired because I wasn't sleeping because of the pain, and yada yada yada. You don't need to know the rest, but all you need to know is I am cured and I am back, baby. Now, I originally intended for my return to come in the form of a live stream, which is happening this weekend, in which we are building the companions, house in Minthara, Jaheira, Minsk, which I meant to do last weekend, but of course, obviously, got sick. And can I just say, I love that Life was like, oh yeah, you're going to release your 100th build video, it's going to be released to a lot of very kind words, and it's really going to feel like a real high point in your YouTube career, as it were, and then you're going to get smacked down with a disease that has made you the worst you've ever felt in a long time. So... But I'm really, really happy to be back for you all, and I kind of just wanted to ease myself back into things with kind of a bonus video this Friday, just to give you guys all a little bit of content before the stream, and then again, we're going to be diving into D&D content starting on Monday, which I'm really looking forward to. But that's just where I've been, what I'm planning to do, so let's get into this video. As you saw from the title, this is going to be a bit similar to my 100th build. This is a alternate, or I guess remastered, take on an older concept that I've done, and we're going to be doing the concept on the build on my channel that is by far the most popular I've ever done, the dancer of, oh my god, I just listened to the pronunciation and I've forgotten it. Eilistrae, no, hold on, I'm literally going to listen to I refuse to get it wrong again, not this late into this channel's lifespan. Listening. Eilistrae. Okay, I'm assuming you all heard that. Eilistrae. Now, with Eilistrae, so with that original build, I guess, and with Eilistrae as a whole, I really wanted to create a true protagonist. Someone whose story, racial choice affecting dialogue, class choice, weapon choice, all made sense within the narrative, but also felt really unique to the player character as you went through. And so you really felt like you were a part of the story, because the Dark Urge heavily affects the story and is an active character within it that has their own goals and ambitions. And I think, while Tav, while still a fun character to play, they're still a blank slate. While their actions do affect the campaign, they don't have much of a place within it outside of literally being your own avatar. So I wanted to originally make a character that truly felt like the protagonist of the story, that went for specific things that made sense for their character, but also felt really good and had their own, big moments in the game. A good example of this being getting Fala Aluf, which is literally, I've actually forgot it again, I'm just going to say what I have been saying, Eilistrae's weapon, that being Fala Aluf, and you literally get a whole cutscene of you pulling it out of the stone, or if you know the cantation, the ritual, because you are a Cleric of Eilistrae, then you can, just get it basically for free. And it's a really cool character moment, and that was kind of what inspired the whole character to begin with. Now, in that original video, there was a problem. I didn't exactly do a lot of research because I wasn't really too familiar on D&D lore. I was very new to making videos at the time, and I was very, let's just say, short-sighted in my ambitions at that time. And as such, I ended up making a lot of mistakes, a lot of things people wanted to correct me on. But listen, okay, the main thing people kept telling me about was that Eilistrae clerics are supposed to be nude. No! Only during ceremonies, not all the bloody time, you horny bastards. So this character wearing armor is absolutely fine, but if you wanted to go down that route, I actually do have a solution for you in this video. So with this kind of looking back over things, I've read the lore, I've come up with a slightly alternate take on the build. It's not as big of a difference as I thought it would be. It kind of keeps the same core idea, but there's a bunch of new things, more optimizations, better equipment, and again, just a better overall understanding of the lore coming from me to make this a much better video. Now, I just also, obviously you may have noticed a bit of a difference here, I've decided to put the combat footage over my beginning ramblings instead, so that you can actually see it, and I'm actually testing the builds on Act 3 encounters now, because while I was off sick, I decided to play through the whole game with this build, get to Act 3, and now I have a patch 6 save file with new mods to make videos, and a bunch of encounters to test my builds on. So you're going to see a lot of quality of life improvements coming to the channel from here on out. But with that out of the way, let's get into the build. Of course, we're going to be starting as a bard with Eilistrae, Eilistrae clerics basically being called, or like their followers being called, sword dancers. Well, Blade Singer obviously comes to mind first, as that's literally an elven art of, dancing while wielding a weapon as a form of combat. We don't exactly have Blade Singer in this game unless you mod the game, and I think one of the biggest appeals of the original video is that this build is as vanilla as possible, and I've stuck with that for this video. None of the visual cosmetics in this are modded, this is all vanilla, so you can make this exactly as you see it in-game, and I wanted to keep that aspect for this build, regardless. And as such, I thought, well, the closest thing we can get to with that then is instead to go with a bard, because I feel like this is a character similar to the original video who basically wants to who started off in the Underdark. They are a full drow, they are a Seladrine Drow, and they basically have decided to rise out of the Underdark using Eilistrae's appreciation for art, song, music, nature, everything, and spreading that love and joy throughout Faerun in order to show everyone that the Drow are not as bad as everyone thinks they are. And as such becomes the face of the party. They're highly charismatic, they're playing a class, being a bard, that is not taken up by an origin or additional companion, so it feels pretty unique to your own character. And we also have a combination here that is going to be one of the more powerful kind of, class combinations you can have, so I think you're really going to like this. It's going to feel like you are the protagonist of your own game, and with the equipment and the strategies that we have set up, you're going to see that the progression of this character is great, very similar to the original. But anyways, like I said, we're kicking things off with a bard, which means we're going to get a couple of really useful things, namely cantrips. Vicious Mockery is an absolute must. I absolutely love it on all bards, mainly just because it is a decent cantrip anyway, allowing us to deal psychic damage, which is a hard damage type for most enemies to resist, and gives them a disadvantage on a next attack roll. It also literally throws out voice taunts, which are amazing, so if you've not played a bard before, absolutely give it a shot. I've also gone for Friends. It's one of the best cantrips if you are the face of the party. If you're playing on Balanced or Explorer, there's literally no downside. But on Tactician and Honor mode, enemies can go hostile on Tactician and will go hostile on Honor mode once it runs out. So be a bit more careful, but getting advantage on any charisma checks against non-hostile creatures is really nice, so I like to pick it up here. Next up for our spells, we have a fairly standard utility kit. Again, this is mainly built for role-playing and being able to interact with the game as much as possible, again, being a true protagonist, and this first level of Bard is going to get us a lot of what we want, namely Longstrider for a little bit of extra movement speed, Featherfall to allow us to traverse the map way easier, Speak with Animals to open up every single animal as a potential dialogue, options, so now you can speak with a bunch of animals, which unlocks quest lines, funny dialogue, lots of interesting situations, and unique solutions to situations that you wouldn't normally have available to you. Absolutely worth it. And finally, Dissonant Whispers, because I want a decent damaged spell that can be cast with scaled up spell slots, so we have a decent range damage option, and this one is a great one. It deals psychic damage. Again, not a lot of enemies resist it, except for like Mind Flayers and such, which I guess becomes more of a problem towards the end of the game, but it's not so much for the most part. And it also allows us to frighten creatures, meaning they have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls, and they cannot move. Really awesome spell, absolutely love it. Now, as for our starting instrument, I've actually got a good one here, the flute. And the reason I've gone with the flute is because in the Forgotten Realms wiki page, it's specified that Eilistrae has, I've said the name of the deity like 50 different ways in just this video. I've even looked it up and I'm still getting it wrong. Regardless, that's just how I roll. She actually has an ability or like a certain attack or something that basically sounds like a flute, and it's kind of recognizable as her thing. So I thought our character having a flute makes total sense because it's literally calling on that power of Eilistrae. So I said it a different way then. So I feel like the flute makes sense here. As for our ability scores, they are a bit different than the original build. One thing I did not like about my original build was the stat score spread. It was when I still didn't really understand how the math worked as well as I should have, so I had both Constitution at 15 and Charisma at 17, which was just... it was not good. Like, that build, honestly, in retrospect, was not great. But don't get me wrong, I think the concept and the characterization was perfect, but the actual build itself needed some work, and I feel like I've fixed that with this video. So, here we have our stats. Strength is at 8 because we don't need it. Dexterity is at 8 because, yes, we are going to be using the Gloves of Dexterity to put this up to 18. Now, originally, in my original video, I used the Gloves of the Automaton. For some reason that today I still don't understand, and I feel like the Gloves of Dexterity are going to make this build a lot better. It's going to immediately set our main attacking stat, which is Dex, to 18. And that means we have a lot more freedom for the rest of our skill points, allowing us to become a much better face of the party by having points in Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence, meaning that we can pass way more checks than we would normally be able to and be way more versatile. Constitution is at 16 because I want to be able to make those saving throws. Intelligence is at 12, again, for, you know, skill checks, same with Wisdom, but for the saving throws, that's also really nice. And Charisma is our main spellcasting stat, so we want it as high as we can get it. As for our skill proficiencies, I have gone with the Folk Hero background. Now, obviously for a build like this, Acolyte and Entertainer would both obviously make a ton of sense. However, Folk Hero just felt right to me, as it did in the original video. Getting inspiration from doing good, which is literally what this character is all about, literally being a heroic character that rises up from a society that literally deems that kind of shit to be bad. I think it's great, and I really, really like having that aspect to this character exist, so we've gone with Folk Hero. That's going to give us Animal Handling, which unfortunately is completely useless since we have Speak with Animals, but what have you, and Survival, which is nice, and I feel like Survival does make sense for a character like this. You literally have to survive in the Underdark, so, you know, makes sense. We also get Perception because we are a Drow for free, which is nice. And I've gone for Performance, Persuasion, and Religion as our chosen proficiencies. Persuasion and Performance are obvious, and Religion makes sense again because we are a religious character at the end of the day. So I quite liked having those proficiencies, but you can put them in anything you like. That's what makes this build so versatile. Next up, at level 2, I want to take a quick 1-level multi-class dip in the exact same way in the original video. This is because I want to get those Eilistrae dialogue options as quickly as possible, so we are going to be jumping over to Cleric. Now, nothing's really going to change here from the original video. If you saw that video, you know what we're getting into here. We're going to be choosing the life domain, because one of Eilistrae's domains is life, and since we're only going to be taking a 1-level dip in this build, it made sense to go for this one. This is going to give us a few things, namely heavy armor proficiency. I don't wear heavy armor in this build, my particular fashion of choice is medium armor, but if you go with this, you now have access to every piece of armor in the game, which is going to feel great as you progress. You're not going to be limited by your options. As well as you're going to get a little bit extra to your healing spells, which is nice to have. I feel like a Cleric of Eilistrae would do healing, and we also get things like Bless and Cure Wounds added to our spell list for free. But I can see a few other domains working. Light Domain would also work as well. Knowledge Domain, I guess, could work. I mean, any of these could work. Nature Domain, a lot of them would be on theme. I would argue Tempest and Trickery aren't. And same with War Domain. But if you don't care necessarily about the domain, you just want the dialogue options, I would say War Domain might actually be your best bet. You could get some extra attacks that way. And you'd get martial weapon proficiency as well, so you could use any weapons, not just the bard weapons, but I think Life Domain makes the most sense for this build. But I can see Light also being pretty close to on theme, but I think Life makes the most sense. And of course, our deity of choice is the great and wonderful Eilistrae. I'm going to keep, you know what, I've just decided I'm just going to keep saying it a different way every time, so that I tick everybody off equally. We also get access to some cantrips, and I'm absolutely going to say we want the 3 Pillars of Conversation, because our wisdom isn't the highest, so we don't really need attacking spells from it. So we're grabbing Resistance, Guidance, and Thaumaturgy. Now, Thaumaturgy is great compared to Friends. Friends works for all Charisma checks, while this one only works on Intimidation and Performance. However, Thaumaturgy will not cause people to get mad with you after you use it, so it's a nice alternative when it comes up. Guidance is always great, just being able to add a 1d4 bonus to any skill check is always welcome, and resistance does the same for saving throws. It's just a nice kit that's going to give you that little bit of a boost when you need it. It's going to feel very much like you are the front runner and the face of the party, and you can be entirely self-sufficient in doing so, picking and choosing what buffs you want to use in any given situation. We also do get to prepare some spells, and there's a few that I really like here. The first one being obvious is Sanctuary, allowing you to basically completely protect yourself or an ally from harm. It makes sense to protect an ally from harm from a kind of character standpoint. Again, I think this character would be kind of a protector of the downtrodden, because they kind of know what it's like to be downtrodden, so just because they're a drow trying to live on the surface. And that's one of the things that I love about playing this character. If you play a drow in this game, there's so many different outcomes and dialogue things that happen just because of your race. You experience full-on racism, and I think that's really interesting. And also the bad guys in the game basically give you a free pass for everything as well. Again, it really feels like your character choices and the things that you're doing actually affect the game. Drow, more so than most other races. I think you'll really like playing this character as much as I did with the original build. But yeah, Sanctuary. And also it lets you do some kind of shenanigans. If you feel like you're in a dangerous situation, you just need to get out of it, quickly cast Sanctuary on yourself and dip. You'll see in the combat footage that I showed that I used Sanctuary to get out of a pretty nasty situation with the old, what are they called? Hellfire Watchers? Sorry, you'll have to forgive me, my brain's a little all over the place trying to remember all this information. I have been dead to the world for the past 3 days, okay? Like, strep is a hell of a disease. But yes, anyway, Sanctuary, always good, pick it up. I would say your next best bet would be Healing Word, just so we have that bonus action heal. Again, we're a live cleric, might as well. And your final choice can be whatever you like. We already have Bless, which is a good option, so things like Shield of Faith could be nice. Guiding Bolt, if you want to kind of risk the lower chance to hit with just the advantage that it can grant. It's entirely up to you. I quite like Create or Destroy Water, because it comes up in a lot more situations than you'd think, and if you have someone that can cast lightning spells on your team, maybe like a Storm Sorcerer or something like that, this can really help them out. So it works as a nice synergy if you have a party member that can use it. And again, it has more uses than you would think. Not a lot of people pay attention to the Destroy Water aspect, which can really help. So I would definitely pick that one up. Now, with that out of the way, I am going to jump back over to Bard, and we're going to stay there. You could take 2 levels of Cleric, mix it up a little bit if you want Preserve Life, which doesn't scale with your Cleric level, and actually scales with your total level, so you could get a bit more out of it. I could be wrong about that, but I've been told that that's how that works, so let me know. So I feel like Preserve Life could be worth it if you really wanted to lean into that healer aspect, but I am personally not doing that, so we're going to get back over to Bard to get our main kit. Level 2 of Bard is going to give us a ton of really useful things, namely Jack of all trades, which is much more valuable on this version of the build than it was the original, because all of our stats are quite spread out. You're going to get much more use out of this, because it gives us half of our proficiency bonus in all of ability checks that we're not proficient in. So allowing us to be able to succeed way more checks across the board, even if we're not proficient. So for a build with stats like these, it works nicely. Song of Rest is a 3rd short rest per long rest, which is, oh, it's so good, especially in honor mode. Do I think this build would work in honor mode? Yes, you just got to be a bit careful, that's all. This isn't the tankiest build in the world, so be ready. Next up, we do get to pick another spell, and I think you could go for Fairy Fire. It would help out your teammates quite a lot, and it is very on theme with being a drow. We do get this just from our race, but it's once per long rest, so if you wanted to use it more times, you absolutely could. Thunderwave could be also a nice offensive option if you need someone to get away from you, but I quite like literally doing the protagonist move and picking up Heroism, allowing you to make yourself or a target you choose immune to being frightened and gain 5 temporary hit points each turn. And I've just recently learned that if you upcast this with higher level spell slots, you can target more than one target per spell slot. So I think it's actually quite a nice spell, and you can literally do the heroic entrance if you use it, so it works out quite nicely. And there you go, there's Fairy Fire, once per long rest, from our drow race. At Bard level 3, we are going to be choosing our subclass, and nothing is changing from the original video. This feels pretty obvious, but if we want to make a dancing, blade-based character, College of Swords makes perfect sense. Now, this kind of is funny. This is my 2nd College of Swords build in a row. Again, I didn't intend to do this build today. I mean, I just kind of hinted that I might do it in the 100th video, and people were just like, yes, please do that. So I'm like, why not? I'll do this now to ease me back into content creation after my nearly week-long hiatus. So anyway, as a College of Swords, we are going to get a fighting style, and we're going to be going with 2 weapon fighting here. Now, in the original, I got dueling, I believe, because, well, we were going to be just using 1 weapon, I think. Or did I get 2 weapon fighting for the dual crossbows? I can't remember. Either way, we're getting 2 weapon fighting here because there is a big change to this build over the original that I'll get into when we get there. As for our spells, we do get to pick a level 2 spell at this point, and the best spell you can pick up here for this build is Hold Person. Hold Person is really great for this build, especially when you get to Act 3 and there's a lot more humanoid enemies. Being able to upcast it so it can hold more than 1 enemy at a time. Our high charisma score will mean that saving throw is a lot harder to make, and because we're going to be able to attack so many times in a round, again, you'll see why later, we'll be able to do a ton of critical hits in a row, just absolutely shredding our opponents. Unfortunately, it's not going to work on monstrous creatures or automatons, so it's not an all-around perfect spell, but again, for those human-type enemies that you have to deal with in this game, it is really good. I absolutely recommend picking this up now. And as well, I forgot to mention with the College of Swords, we are going to be getting the Blade Flourishes as well, but most of you already know this. It's basically just augmented ranged and melee attacks. Both melee and ranged having their own variant of the same thing. So we get 3 different things here. Slashing Flourish, allowing you to attack 2 enemies at once, with the ranged version allowing you to select 1 enemy to hit twice, which is really nice. It deals extra slashing damage equal to our Bardic Inspiration die and costs our Bardic Inspiration to use. So in our case at the moment, a d6. There's Defensive Flourish, which if you hit, increases your armor cost by 4, which is going to be great for this build. In fact, it's actually probably my favorite flourish to use. And finally, Mobile Flourish, which allows us to hit an enemy and then teleport to them afterwards, dealing extra damage as well, same as all the flourishes. I mean, these are great. These are some of the most versatile kind of battle skills you can have in this game. In my Dante video, which was the last video I did, we combine this with the Battle Master maneuvers to just have a ton of different options in battle, and it's no exception here. This is brilliant. We also get to choose 2 skill expertise here, and the game has chosen Performance and Persuasion, and you know what? I can't exactly argue, I think that's perfect. At Bard level 4, we get to choose our first feat, and for this one, I'm going to be choosing our main feat to get our core playstyle going. Dual Wielder. Yes, this is the big change from the original build. We're picking up Dual Wielder. This is a dual wielding build. Now, that may go a little bit against what Eilistrae's kind of image is, being a, dancer with only 1 sword, but there's a change to this build's kind of lore, and the back character kind of, backstory I came up with, that I think justifies this quite nicely, and again, it creates a really cool new playstyle that I think you're really, really going to enjoy. Because I don't think this character would just worship Eilistrae anymore. And I'll get to who that other deity is in a minute. It's kind of a dual deity build. Ooh la la. And why the fuck did I just say that? Oh, that was weird. Okay. Anyways, we get to pick another cantrip at this level, and there's a ton you could go for here, but I think Mage Hand is one of the most versatile cantrips in the game, and I really like having it. Just remember that you have it. I keep forgetting I have it in situations where it would actually be really useful, so just please remember that you have it. As for our spells, we do get to pick another level 2 option here, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick. Nothing immediately stands out to me as something that we absolutely must have, but things like Invisibility, Knock, Shatter, See Invisibility, Thrall, Heat Metal, Enhanced Ability, they could all be really useful. It's entirely up to you, and in fact, hell, Cloud of Daggers could kind of be like dancing blades, like spinning around in the air. I mean, you could justify it any way you like. It's entirely up to you. I'm probably going to go with Invisibility, because I think that's what I chose before anyway, and I think it works alright for this build. But anyways, we'll keep going for now. We get Darkness now as a racial option if you wanted to pick up something like the Ever Sight Ring to stop yourself from being blinded and go for a Darkness Devil Sight combo without actually having Devil Sight. That could also work out really nicely, although this is once per long rest, so it's not a core thing of the build, but you could totally pick it up if you wanted. At Bard level 5, we're going to be getting some really important stuff here. We're going to be getting our Bardic Inspiration die upgraded to a d8, which means now all of our Blade Flourishes now deal an extra bit of damage, as well as Font of Inspiration, allowing those Bardic Inspiration die to recharge on a short rest as well as a long rest, meaning that we're going to have access to our Blade Flourishes way more often. We also do get level 3 spells by this point, and one spell that I found really works nicely for me with this build is Hypnotic Gaze. Basically just choosing a big group of enemies to completely debilitate until they are hit, or until 2 turns pass. It can really help to kind of set things up in a battle, just quickly take that group of enemies out, get set up, and then unleash hell once your setup turns are done. It's really helpful for your party members to kind of be able to have that. But you can take other things too here, like Glyph of Warding could work well, Speak with Dead would be great again as a protagonist option, but I would really just use Withers' Necklace if you need to speak with Dead for whatever reason, and just kind of swap that out. It's entirely up to you. The only one I actively would not pick is Fear, because I feel like that's the exact opposite of what this character goes for, thematically at least, so I'd leave that one be, but Hypnotic Gaze is what I'm going for now. At Bard level 6, we are going to be finally getting extra attack, meaning that now we can attack twice with our action instead of once. You know how extra attack works. Now, the only thing that does kind of suck about this build is that Bard gets extra attack a level late anyway, and because we took that level 1 dip into Cleric, which I would still absolutely recommend you take because the dialogue options are really good, we're basically delaying extra attack by 2 levels here. The main draw of this build as you kind of progress through the game, as how I played it, is the fact that you're mainly going to be using your spells and such to be able to control the battlefield, as well as be able to attack with your weapons when needed, as well, and kind of allowing your teammates to kind of make up the shortfall, and then you get extra attack, and you get the rest of your equipment, and you're good to go. Again, since this is a dual-wielding build as well, you will technically get extra attack a bit earlier anyway, because as soon as you hit level 5, total level 5, and you get that feat, you're able to attack with your bonus action anyway, so, and you will already have 2-weapon fighting as well, so, you know, it's basically a full extra attack with your offhand weapon, so it makes sense. So it doesn't hurt too much, but it's nice to have it as soon as you can get it, and now that we have it, this build really takes off, because now we have 3 attacks in a turn with our offhand dual wielder attack, so it makes sense. We also get Counter Charm, which is okay. Any allies within 9 meters of where you place the charm have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. Very niche. The best part about it is the fact that that the charm that it summons is a music box that plays like the music box rendition of the main theme of the game, so it's nice, but it's not great. As for our spells, we do get to pick another one here, and I'm going to go with, I'll go with Speak with Dead just because I kind of talked about it, but it's entirely up to you. Plant Growth could work really nicely, Glyph of Warding would be great, Cloud of Daggers could be cool, Shatter, pick whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. At Bard level 7. Now, I would say, actually, after Bard level 6, you could take the next levels that you see in any order that you like, but you definitely kind of want to get to that extra attack. I kind of want my Bard levels more first, but if you wanted to take our other multi-class, because there is another one, you can do so instead. But let's go into the Bard levels for now. So, with Bard level 7, we do get level 4 spells, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick. I quite like picking up Freedom of Movement because it's basically just a free buff that you don't need to maintain concentration on and lasts until your next long rest. It will snap any ally out of stun, which is great, so you can't be stunned while you're under this. Difficult terrain cannot slow you down, and you cannot be magically paralyzed or restrained. It basically just gives you complete freedom of movement. And if the target is restrained by non-magical means, it could spend a little bit of movement speed to free itself. It's basically just a nice little buff to have that comes up in more situations than you might think. You just cast it at the beginning of the day and forget about it, but then you notice it when it comes up. So I quite like having it. But next up at Bard level 8, we're going to be getting our second feat of the build. Now, I'm just going to be taking an ability score improvement here to bump up our Charisma to 18. We're not going to be maxing out Charisma on this build without equipment, but you can use equipment to do so if you would like. But 18 is a pretty happy final score for me to go with, in my opinion, and it's the same as the original build in that respect. So, you know, we definitely have optimized our stats a bit better here compared to the original build, like I said. So yeah, we have a nice, good number to end on here. And finally, for our last level 4 spell, we're going to be picking up Greater Invisibility. I remember I said in the original video, and I'll recount it here, that I thought the best thing you could possibly do is you kind of hear a character playing their song, but it kind of echoes around the room, and you have no idea where it's coming from, only to be struck down by an invisible force as the music continues, and eventually once all of your allies are dead or dropped on the floor, they reveal themselves, and it's just like this bard character. I don't know. I just felt like that felt really cool. You just hear the song throughout the room, but you have no idea where it's coming from as people drop around you. I don't know. It's a bit spooky for a character that's supposed to be good, but I don't know. I still think it's cool. Also, greater invisibility is a really good spell, so, you know. Anyways, with our final 3 levels that we have, I want to pick up one last multi-class, and most of you would have guessed it already. It's Rogue. Rogue is going to give us a ton of stuff here. We're going to be getting Sneak Attack, which we can actually use on this build because my weapons of choice are both Finesse, which is awesome. So we get to use Sneak Attack, which is going to allow us to, once per turn, add a bit of extra slashing damage to our attacks. It's 1d6 at the moment, and I think by the time we hit the max level, we get it 2d6, so it's decent. It's a little bit of extra damage, which we will absolutely be taking. We also do get to choose an extra skill proficiency and 2 expertise. I'm going to say I want stealth? No, acrobatics, because I feel like that makes sense. We'll get expertise in acrobatics, and I'll also grab expertise in religion. I mean, you can take whatever you like here. I just think the idea of this character having acrobatics as kind of a blade dancer that weaves in between things makes a lot of sense. It's also going to help you being shoved. I mean, we're getting this total level 10, so, you know, it's kind of whatever. And, yeah, getting that religion expertise, because, again, we are a religious character. It makes sense. Next up at Rogue level 2, we're going to get the ability to dash, hide, and disengage as a bonus action. The main thing here is being able to dash. This is going to give us a ton of maneuverability around the battlefield, allowing us to zip, zap, dash, and dance around our foes as much as we like. And then finally, at Rogue level 3, we get to pick our subclass, and no sugarcoating it, we're picking Thief. We're a dual-wielding build. This extra bonus action is essentially another extra attack, giving us up to 4 attacks per round with our weapons, which is amazing. So definitely worth picking up here. Again, you could pick this up before the final 2 Bard levels if you like, if you want to get this a bit quicker, but overall, it doesn't really matter. And that is the build. Overall, you're going to be getting an absolute ton out of this. My hotbar is now completely messed up, but I'll kind of talk as I kind of reorganize it. No, I don't want to cast Dancing Lights. Thank you very much, game. So, what you're going to be getting out of this build is a ton of utility. You're going to be the face of the party, allowing you to pass most of the skill checks in the game. You're going to get a ton of maneuverability thanks to the rogue levels. You're going to be getting a ton of damage thanks to the sneak attack and the blade flourishes. You're going to get things like healing, the short rests, all of past pretty much every skill check in the game. Be able to use battlefield control through hold person and hypnotize and hypnotic pattern. You'll be able to do range damage quite easily with things like vicious mockery, buffing up your allies with bardic inspiration if you need to, and also gain access to pretty much all the game's content through things like Speak of Animals, and again, having that really high charisma stat. This is definitely the character that I would say is the do everything in the game character. Just play through as much game content as you can with this character. If you're doing a second playthrough where you're like looking up where quests are and stuff, do it with this character, because I think this character will feel like the main character. Because it's all well and good when you can make a custom character in a game and have as much freedom as you do, but because you have so much freedom, your character feels like your choices you make when you actually make your character feel less impactful, whereas I feel like the racial choice and again the equipment that we're going to be grabbing is really going to make this character feel like they're of central importance to the game, and it does feel like the hero's tale for sure. Let's get into the equipment real quick. So, the main thing here is the weapons, and the obvious one being Fala Alluve, which I'll put here. So, Fala Alluve is Eilistrae's weapon. It's really awesome because you get it in Act 1, so you can obtain it really early on. You find it in the Underdark, which makes sense. And again, if you are a Cleric of Eilistrae, you get this really, really cool moment in a cutscene that you wouldn't normally otherwise get. And as such, you get to get this weapon basically for free, and it's a really good weapon, all things considered. It's a +1 weapon, which is decent for the early game. It gives you a +1 to performance, which is nice for a bard, we like that, but it also has a unique ability called Fala Alluve Melody, allowing you to either use Sing or Shriek, which provide 2 different effects. Sing basically gives all of your allies Bless when it comes to attack rolls, and Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence saving throws within a 6-meter range around you. But the main thing that everyone uses and agrees is the more powerful option is Shriek, causing all enemies within the range to have a 1d4 penalty to Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence saving throws, so the opposite of before, but also creatures within this 6-meter range take an extra 1d4 thunder damage whenever they take other sources of damage. So you can kind of use this with something like Magic Missile, for example, and have every single Magic Missile you land deal an extra 1d4 thunder damage, which is... it's very strong. So basically this can buff you and your whole party, and again, when we attack as much as we do, getting that extra bit of thunder damage on every attack we do is really nice, stacking in with other buffs that we can grab as well, because again, this is the weapon we're going to be using for the whole game, so we need ways to buff it up. But let's get into my other weapon of choice, and we're going to get into some more lore and backstory stuff here. This is Seladrine's Wrath. Now, for those of you that don't know, and I would equip this in the main hand, by the way, because it has a unique attack that only works in the main hand, whereas you can use the melody in the main hand or the offhand. Basically, for those of you that don't know, Eilistrae is actually the daughter of Lolth and Corellian Larithian, which is basically the father god of all elves. And I think, and this weapon is also obtained in Act 1 as well. Now, it's usually just a +1 weapon, but I have buffed it with the Drakethroat Glaive here as well, to make it a +2 weapon with an extra bit of fire damage, and I'll get to more of that in a minute. But the main thing with Larithian's Wrath is like, I think this character, after spreading their song far and wide, and this is before the Nautiloid, by the way, they're spreading their songs and their teachings far and wide, you know, taking part in their ceremonies, their blade dances, trying to spread the word and love of Eilistrae, and spread the ideology that Drow are not all what people think they are, and that they deserve a chance to be understood. But I don't think a lot of people would listen. Unfortunately, Eilistrae's teachings aren't widely understood by the mass populace, and as such are shut down quite a lot, and as such, people who practice them are often openly targeted and ridiculed, and basically angry mobbed out of towns even sometimes. And I think that could even happen in a place as big and diverse as Baldur's Gate. So I think in a bit of a kind of like low point in this character's kind of life, they may have turned to a different tactic. While obviously still worshipping Eilistrae at the end of the day, I think they would take on and try to understand the teachings of Corellian. Understanding the creator of all elves and trying to, you know, use their teachings to help deepen their understanding of their own, and as such be able to find new ways to spread that message and come at it with a new perspective and understanding, so not just trying to appeal to everyone, but primarily the elves first, which would then allow that to spread to the other races as well, with the influence that elves have in general. And I think that makes sense, and as such, because this game has 2 finesse longswords, which means they use your dexterity, in both Fowler Reluve, which is Eilistrae's weapon, and Larithian's Wrath, which is Corellian's weapon, it made sense to use them both. Doing this allows us to kind of have a silver sword and a golden sword, which looks awesome, and as such I've dyed the armor to include purple, gold, and silver. Like, the fashion for this build is undeniably great. And again, it boosts this build's power by giving us more attacks per round. Being able to use 2 weapons with the dual wielder feat also boosts our AC as well, which is really, really nice, giving us a nice rounded out 20, and I think is just a nice little addition onto the lore of this character that wasn't already present, and it creates a much more fun playstyle that looks way more badass in my opinion. I mean, just look at how these swords look sheathed on the back. They are sick. I love it. I've used this combination a couple of times, but this is where I think it truly shines and makes the most sense. Now, like I said, these are both +1 weapons at the end of the day that are obtained in Act 1, so they're really, really good. Like, the playstyle for this build comes online super early. Like, pretty much a lot of this stuff is obtained in Act 1 or 2, so it makes a ton of sense, and, you know, you just get all this stuff online pretty quick. But they do need to be buffed to stay viable, so we have a couple of weapons here that can do that. We have the Drakethroat Glaive, which, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know, if you twin cast the spell with a sorcerer, you can buff 2 weapons at once with a +1 to their damage and attack rolls, as well as an extra d4 of damage of a chosen type. I've done it in plenty of videos before, so... And I did actually have both weapons buffed at the start of this video, but for some reason, one of the buffs went away when I respec'd. I don't know why. But yeah, basically you can kind of use this weapon, put both swords on the ground, have a sorcerer twin cast the buff that comes with this weapon. In fact, I'll equip it so you can see. Here we are. And again, you get the +1 bonus to attack rolls, and it is to damage as well. I don't know why it only says to attack rolls, it is to damage. And it deals an additional 1d4 damage of your choice. So, you know, Basically, it's a big buff overall. But there is another weapon that can actually do this. Let me just re-equip these. And that is the Flail of Ages. Now, the Flail of Ages is obtained in Act 3, whereas the Drakeford Glaive is in Act 2. And what the Flail of Ages does is a very similar thing, except it's only meant to buff itself. It normally can't buff other weapons, as you can see here. It gives the exact same buff, except it's slightly limited in the amount of elements it can do. However, if you have the weapon you want to buff in your main hand, and equip this in the offhand, casting the buff will only affect the main hand weapon, so in reality you can combine the Flail of Ages with the Drakeford Glaive to have two different elements on each weapon, which just looks badass. I had fire and lightning originally, and it looked really cool. Basically, the whole idea there is that you can kind of either use the Drakeford Glaive's twin cast method, or using both, you can basically buff these weapons to be +2 weapons overall, with an extra bit of damage, which is perfectly fine to take you through the whole game. Yes, we do get legendary +3 weapons by the end, and technically if you had a +2 weapon, you would be making it a +3 weapon with this method, but +2 is perfectly serviceable, especially when the buffs that we get far, like the fact that both of the weapons are finesse and all that such, far outweigh the downside of it not being a +3 weapon. So I feel like it works out really, really nicely. Now, I've had to just... I'll quickly show off the ranged weapon because it is quite important. We are using a classic for the channel, the Darkfire Shortbow, and I actually have a I have a reason for this. On Eilistrae's wiki page, she has an alias of Darkfire something. It's on the wiki page, so it makes sense. It's a really weak justification, but if you go check the wiki page, there is a mention of like the Lady of Darkfire or something like that. I swear it's true. This is a +2 bow, which grants us resistance to fire and cold damage and gives us haste. Now, in my original video, I used dual crossbows, and one of the things people were quick to point out to me with that video is that with Clerics of Eilistrae, ranged weapons are kind of a no-no. But because this character is now also following Corellian, who is known for using both a longsword and a bow, I feel like it's kind of justified that if you wanted to use bow attacks with this build, it would be totally fine within the lore once you start following Corellian, but after you get his weapon in Act 1. And as such, or if you don't want to use a bow, just keep this in your offhand, gain the resistances and the once per long rest haste for free. I mean, you might as well, right? There's no reason not to. So yeah, absolutely worth it in this build. Pick it up in early Act 2 and go absolutely crazy. Haste makes this build go from 4 attacks to 6 attacks in a turn. It goes nuclear. It's brilliant. Right, let's have a look at the rest of the equipment now. This has been a very long equipment section, but hey ho. First up, we have the Birthright Hat, giving us a +2 to our Charisma, allowing us to go all the way up to 20. This is just going to give us better spell save DCs on our things like Hold Person and Hypnotic Gaze and whatever, but you don't actually have to have this if you don't really care about that as much. As well as the fact that this is an Act 3 option, I've come up with some other alternatives for the earlier game. Namely, my personal choice for Diadem of Arcane Synergy. What this does is it allows you to, whenever you inflict a condition, which is really easy for this build to do, because I believe the Valor Aloof Melody Shriek inflicts a condition, Vicious Mockery does, Dissonant Whispers does, a lot of our spells do. You can quite easily get this off. You gain Arcane Synergy whenever you inflict a condition. And as such, our spellcasting ability modifier is added to the damage of our weapon attacks, meaning that our high Charisma is now also affecting our weapon attacks, meaning we deal even more damage. Really great. You get this around the same time you gain Larethian's Wrath, so might as well pick it up and make your build a lot stronger. This is an Act 1 option, so perfect. As well as the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, this is also a good option. Whenever we deal damage with a weapon attack, we gain Arcane Acuity. And Arcane Acuity means we have a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class for each remaining turn. So it kind of does the opposite of the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. Instead of casting a spell to augment our weapon attacks, we make a weapon attack to augment our spells. So it's entirely up to you if you'd rather have this or the Diadem. I personally prefer the Diadem, but this is also a nice option. Anyways, let's move on to the Cloak. I've gone with the Cloak of Displacement here. At the beginning of the wearer's turn, the Cloak activates, granting enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that target the wearer. Basically, this kind of gives you a free casting of Blur every time you start your turn. And I feel like, and I used this in the original video as well, but I'll kind of give my explanation again here. Again, I imagine this character who's dancing and weaving through the battlefield as they strike with their sword, or in our case swords, and they're just so hard to see that they become a blur with how, fluid and quick their movements are. And I feel like this cloak literally does that for us. Unfortunately, this is an Act 3 option, and it makes sense because it's quite powerful, so you're not going to be getting it until the kind of, I would say, kind of last 40% of the game, but it's absolutely worth picking up for this build. And again, coloured right, it looks great. I'm pretty sure all of these are coloured with the dark amethyst dye, and it just looks gorgeous. I think the only exception is the boots, which are muddy red, but I just love the colour here, man. I think it's perfect. But if you want another cloak option, I quite like the Cloak of Cunning Broom. Since we're taking rogue levels, we can disengage as a bonus action, using one of our 2 bonus actions, I might add. And this, whenever we disengage, creates a foggy cloud around us. And as such, you can kind of create that foggy cloud and then attack enemies a lot easier because they can't see. So it's quite a powerful combo that people have pointed out to me before, so I thought I would mention it here. Next up is the 1T scale mail, a piece of medium armor that can be picked up in Act 2. It adds our full dexterity modifier to our armor class instead of the limited amount that medium armor usually grants, and additionally we do not gain disadvantage on stealth checks, and we also gain a +1 bonus to initiative rolls, which is really, really nice. But of course the main thing here is the fashion. The little neck scarf, the way the colours work, the way it blends with the other equipment, the little kind of tailcoat thing that we get. It's one of the best looking armors in the game by far, and is my personal favourite for female characters, because unfortunately male characters don't get the little neck scarf, which sucks. But again, this can be obtained in early Act 2, so it's perfect to pick up. Next up, the Gloves of Dexterity. This is an Act 1 option, you already know what it does. And you get this around the same time you get Lorethian's Wrath of the Diadem, so pick it up and make your build awesome. Now, it may suck to start with 8 Dexterity, so I definitely recommend kind of changing up those starting stats a bit, taking those points out of Intelligence and Wisdom, putting them into Dexterity, and then respecking once you get these gloves. But I feel like with this build, again, if you're focusing more on the spellcasting, you might not worry about your dexterity as much, but 8 dexterity would still suck, so I would definitely respec, but that's up to you if you kind of want to try your luck until you get these. I mean, you can gun it straight for these if you want, but you would mess up the Act 1 questline if you did that, so, you know, you are going to be going, you're going to be going without these for a little bit, but they're still obtained fairly early on, considering where you get them in-game. And finally, an interesting option here, the Acrobat Shoes. Now, you can put anything you like in this slot, but I quite liked these. This is going to give us a +1 to acrobatics, which is nice, but it's also going to give us advantage on dexterity saving throws. And I feel like that makes perfect sense for this character to have advantage on their saving throws. We already have proficiency in them because we started off as a bard, but having advantage on them, again, as a blade dancer who's really quick on their feet and very fluid with their movements, it makes sense for them to be really good at dexterous saving throws, so getting advantage on them is really nice. So this means we're not going to be slipping on things like Grease or Ice nearly as much. Dexterity saving throws against spells like Fireball are going to go way better for us. It makes a ton of sense, so I quite liked picking these up, but you can put whatever you like in this slot. These were just my personal choice, and again, I felt like they fit nicely with the outfit as a whole. Next up, onto the accessories, we have the Amulet of the Harpers here, giving us advantage on wisdom saving throws. I had this in the original build as well, and I felt it was just perfect and decided to keep it. You can get these in early Act 2. Again, that advantage on wisdom saves is lovely, especially for a protagonist type character, because I feel like wisdom saving throws are the ones like where you get mind controlled and all that, so it makes a lot of sense to just have something that prevents that from happening as much. And it also gives us a free casting of shield once per long rest, so, you know, that's nice. Next up is the Strange Conduit Ring. We're pretty much always going to be concentrating on spells, so in addition to the extra d4 of elemental damage that our weapon buffs that our elemental buffs are going to give us, as well as the d4 damage from Feller Aloof Shriek, getting another extra d4 of psychic damage, which makes sense for a bard, because a lot of our damaging spells are psychic damage, on top of all of that is really, really good. Now, in the combat footage, you'll see we're up against the Steel Watcher, so they're actually immune to psychic damage, so technically we were doing less damage than we normally would in that showcase, and as you'll see, this build, and as you saw, I guess, that our damage was still really good, so, you know, it doesn't matter. And finally, this is kind of a free ring slot. You can put whatever you like in the slot, but I really think the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel works here. After hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action. Spoiler alert, all of our good spells are these 2 categories, so you can basically attack with our weapons with our action, and then if you wanted to, you could cast 2 Vicious Mockeries with your 2 bonus actions for the rest of the turn if you wanted. It just gives you a little bit more utility in when you're able to cast your spells and kind of mix them in mid-combo. I think it works really nicely for this build, but unfortunately this is an Act 3 option, so I've got a couple of alternatives from earlier on. First up is an obvious one, the Ring of Arcane Synergy. If you don't end up wanting to wear the diadem but still want to gain Arcane Synergy somehow, this is how you do it. Whenever you deal damage with a cantrip, that being Vicious Mockery for us, you gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns. So if you're not using the diadem, this is an alternate way of doing it. Cast Vicious Mockery with your action and then get 2 boosted attacks with your bonus actions that round, and then you can go for a full 4-hit combo with that boost next turn. Also, there's the Ring of Free Action, and you can kind of get this maybe before the point where you get freedom of movement. This basically just means that you ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained. Again, allowing those fluid movements to work in any situation if we don't have freedom of movement at this point. So it can work a bit better in the earlier game, so around Act 2 is where you'd get this, and that's about kind of where you'd want it. And finally, one last thing I'll mention is, again, the big... I can't believe I'm doing this. The big thing about Eilistrae characters being nude. Well, camp clothing will do that for you. I mean, this obviously isn't nude, but this is as much as I'm willing to... as close as I'm willing to go, because YouTube. And as such, I feel like this outfit works pretty nicely. This is the Angelic Scion outfit, which can be obtained in Act 3, but of course, if you wanted to actually go the, let's just say the nudist route, then you could just not have any camp clothing at all, and just have that be there and still get all the benefits of your armor and such, even though you can't see it. But I'm not going to be doing that because I'm normal. Wasn't meant as a dig, that's just a joke. Do whatever you like, you know I actually don't give a shit. Right, that is the build. I mean, you've already seen the combat footage. I mean, I guess I'll play it again, just so we're not staring at nothing, really, for the next little bit. But as you can see here, this build does do pretty well. We gain a ton of attacks, we get, we get a ton of utility, which we can't really show off against the Steel Watcher, unfortunately. Because of obvious reasons, they're immune to a lot of the stuff that we can do, because they're not really psychically based, so that kind of sucks. But as a pure kind of just DPS test for the build, it does work out pretty nicely. Again, I got to play through basically the whole game with this build, and the amount of battlefield control that you can inflict with things like Hold Person and Hypnotic Gaze, it's really, really nice. And again, this build is mainly for just kind of playing the game and doing the dialogue and getting a ton of fun out of the roleplay side of things. Again, getting Fala Reluve is amazing in this with a build like this. The dialogue options and the way both your Eilistrae and Cleric dialogue options and your Drow dialogue options and how the game treats you because you're a Drow, they mix together in such a really unique and interesting way that just feels so cool to go through the game with. Drow are by far my favourite race to play this game with now. Githyanki are probably a close second because, again, they have a lot of really unique racial stuff that's available to them. Like, there's a lot of interesting things that come out of this build that I don't really want to spoil for you. You just have to play the game and see for yourself. And yeah, I think with this setup, again, you're going to have a ton of damage all across the board. I mean, you can see the Steel Watcher kind of just fell apart. Again, I kind of want to take on the criticism. I kind of wanted to take on the criticism people were giving me about testing builds on the tutorial boss, which is why I've gone to the trouble of making this Act 3 save that is updated to patch 6 and all this, so that I can properly test builds on various different encounters. This was a test against a single Steel Watcher, but I honestly think I could have probably fought maybe 2 at once, or maybe a Steel Watcher and a few guards, or maybe like a group of like humanoid enemies or something. I'll have to keep testing. Again, this is kind of early days for me with this kind of style of testing things, so let me know in the future. But this did, I think, work out pretty well in the long run. I mean, you can see how well this build dodges things. We had a really rocky start because the character the Watcher just opened up with a massive attack straight on our dome, but we were able to allow ourselves a time to buff by casting Sanctuary, giving ourselves haste, giving ourselves a bit of healing, and then we were off to the races after that. We were able to cast Shriek, and then you can see the Watcher just gets beaten down over and over and over again until it eventually goes kaboom. So yeah, as for end of video stuff, I mean, I said it at the start of the video, but I'm back. I've finally gotten over my illness for the most part. I've still got to take the medication for a few more days just to make sure it doesn't come back, which is a scary thought. But trust me, it was not fun. Oh my god, again, it's the worst I've felt in a long time. But I'm really happy to be back, and the channel did well in my absence. Of course, views and, watch time and all that went down, and so did the subscribe. And like, obviously, the channel did go into a bit of a lull, but the subscriber game was still steady, which was nice. And so it kind of made me feel a bit better that if I ever needed to take time off in the future for some reason, I could, and the channel wouldn't just go kaput right off the bat. And I feel like this is a pretty strong video to return on. I mean, I'm literally revisiting my most popular concept ever, my only video with over 100,000 views. It's actually like 130k now or something stupid like that. So not expect. I mean, while I'm not expecting that to be a guaranteed thing if this video is going to do well, because I don't ever expect that, it's just nice to kind of come back with a concept that I know is quite strong and really get me back into the groove of things. So, basically, we're going to be kind of continuing from here on forward as normal. The regular upload schedule will return, and the aforementioned newer content that I promised is going to be coming. Like I said, we're going to be doing the companion build livestream this weekend, so I hope a lot of people come to that. Monday is going to be my first ever D&D build. Again, meant to happen last week, but of course, things change, and as such, moving forward from here, that is going to be part of the new content. Every Monday, a D&D build instead. Then Wednesday, I will probably have that be just either a regular build video or something else. Or a build request or something along those lines. And then Friday we'll be doing the deity builds, that being Ilmata being the next one. Again, meant to happen this past week, but couldn't for obvious reasons. Yeah, and I mean, again, I just want to say a big thank you for sticking with me through your support. All of your get well wishes were very, very comforting as I was laying on what felt like my deathbed. I must admit, it was not fun. And, you know, kind of being worried about, like, what would happen with the channel, because YouTube, again, if you stop uploading for just a little bit, it can kill the momentum, but luckily this channel is still going strong regardless, so, you know, I was a little bit worried, but seeing everybody kind of pitching in and, like, seeing the statistics, I'm like, yeah, it'll be fine. So, but, like I said, I'm glad to be back, going to be getting back into a normal upload schedule, and hopefully, there won't be any more surprises waiting in our near future. Alright, that is going to do it from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all so much for sticking around while I was gone, and I will see you all next time.